A massive controversy has erupted in American media, and it has the potential to shake public trust like never before. A leading newspaper alleged that the current president's health and energy levels are declining, pointing to shorter public days, fewer events, and moments of fatigue during meetings. The intention might have been to raise concern. The result, total chaos. According to the report, the president's schedule became lighter. Fewer appearances, fewer public engagements, longer periods away from public view. The article suggested that those changes might reflect age and diminishing energy. It even claimed there were instances when, during meetings, the president appeared to be drowsy, blinking, rubbing his eyes, looking detached. Observers pointed to late starts, shorter afternoons, and a pattern that they described as slowing down in office. As soon as the article was published, conversations exploded on social media, in political circles, and among news outlets worldwide. Some praised the coverage as necessary scrutiny. Others saw it as an attack. Some were worried about state stability. Many ordinary citizens simply asked, "Is it true?" But remember, this was not a medical report. No official health records were released. No doctor gave a verified diagnosis publicly. Instead, the piece relied on observed behavior, schedule analysis, anonymous or unnamed sources, subtle clues, and interpretations of public appearances. What it offered was a narrative, not proof. That raises a critical question. When a prominent news outlet publishes speculative claims about a leader's fitness, potentially influencing public opinion and global markets, what responsibility do they carry? If facts are unclear, should speculation be framed as possibility? Or as a warning? As news spread, different sections of society began reacting in contrasting ways. Some supporters of the president reacted angrily, calling the article fake news, an insult, an attack on national stability. Others, critics, saw it as overdue transparency. They argued, if the leader cannot function, the country deserves to know. And then came a dramatic twist. At a major media summit organized by the same newspaper, a top official, the nation's Treasury Secretary, stood up and directly challenged the story. He called it 100% fake. He criticized the newspaper as having lost credibility. He accused it of hypocrisy, pointing out past shortcomings and alleged selective coverage of other leaders' health. He went even further, dismissing the article as part of what he called a fever swamp. He questioned how a paper claiming serious concerns about one leader's health could ignore similar concerns about others. Suddenly, the story was no longer just about possible fatigue or aging. It became a confrontation, media versus power, truth versus narrative, fear versus credibility. For the public, this is more than headlines and hot takes. It is identity and trust. It's about whether we believe in institutions or see them as instruments. It's about whether journalism remains a force for truth or becomes a tool for influence. And the stakes are high. Because if influential media outlets lose credibility by publishing speculative claims without verified evidence, the ripple effects are huge. Crisis of trust, polarization, doubt, instability. Already, some corners of political commentary are calling this one of the greatest scandals of all time, not just because of what was written, but because of what might follow. And while this controversy is unfolding in the corridors of power and the pages of newspapers, millions of people from around the world are watching closely. The question now is simple. When you read a headline claiming a leader is unfit, how sure can you be that it is truly fact, not fear disguised as news? Because in a world where perception drives politics, truth becomes the first victim. The moment Scott Bessent responded, the entire narrative shifted from a question about health into a full-scale war between power and the press. His words didn't just defend President Trump. They challenged the credibility of one of the most powerful media institutions in the world. And in today's environment, that kind of confrontation changes everything. At the event, Bessent did not sound cautious. He did not appear hesitant. Instead, his voice carried frustration and anger, not just at the report, but at the idea that such a story could be released without verified medical evidence. He criticized the publication for, in his words, spreading speculation under the banner of journalism. To many watchers, this wasn't just a rebuttal. It was an accusation. It was a claim that the media had crossed an invisible line. That is important, because when a government official accuses a mainstream media outlet of spreading false information, the situation stops being a normal disagreement. It becomes a trust crisis. Inside the room, reactions were mixed. Some attendees looked uncomfortable, some appeared shocked, and others nodded in silent agreement. But outside that room, In the real world, the impact was instant. Within minutes of his statements being shared online, social media erupted again, this time even more intensely than before. Supporters of Trump celebrated the moment. They described it as, finally someone telling the truth to the media. They clipped the video, shared it, turned it into trending content. Meanwhile, critics accused Besant of trying to silence journalism and intimidate reporters. The country split once again into two realities. On one side, people saw the newspaper as brave for raising uncomfortable questions. On the other side, people saw the article as dangerous propaganda. Neither side was willing to move an inch. And that is exactly what makes this situation so powerful and so frightening at the same time. In the age of social media, perception travels faster than proof. People don't wait for facts. They choose a side. They defend their belief. They share their version. And slowly, the original reality disappears under a mountain of opinion. As the conversation continued, more details began surfacing from journalists and political analysts. Some said that similar observations about schedule changes had been made years ago about other presidents as well, including moments when leaders reduced public appearances for rest, illness, or strategy. They argued this was normal, human, and not necessarily a sign of decline. Others insisted that this time felt different, that the pattern appeared more consistent, that body language, reduced speeches, and subtle changes should not be ignored. They argued transparency is essential when the person involved holds the most powerful office in the world. And again, the public stood between two equally loud voices. One saying, "This is fake, this is lying, this is manipulation." The other saying, "This is truth, this is concern, this is responsibility." And in the middle of it all was silence from the one person everyone wanted to hear from, Donald Trump himself. There was no immediate official medical statement, no recorded interview addressing the claims, no clear public rejection or verification. That silence became fuel. Because when a story is not clearly shut down or confirmed, imagination fills the gap. Speculation increased. Major political commentators began predicting outcomes. Would this affect future elections? Would it damage global confidence in American leadership? Would it be used by opposition groups as a political weapon? And the most interesting part of all, even people who normally avoid politics started paying attention. Because this is not just a political story anymore. It is a human story. It is about age, power, leadership, and the right to know the truth. It is about whether a nation is being guided by strength or secrecy. Behind closed doors, discussions grew intense. Political advisors debated how to handle the media. Lawyers debated the possibility of defamation or misinformation. Campaign strategists analyzed public reaction minute by minute, because perception decides elections. But here is the harsh truth that many refuse to say out loud. In modern politics, it does not matter what is true. It matters what people believe is true. And that belief is shaped by repetition, by headlines, by hashtags, by viral videos, by reactions, by anger, by fear. When journalists write with implications, and politicians respond with outrage, the public is left in the middle of a storm of uncertainty. There is no clear ground, no clear sky, only noise, confusion, loyalty, and suspicion. And the longer that lasts, the more damage it causes to democracy itself. Because a democracy relies on one simple thing, informed trust. When trust disappears, anything becomes possible. That's why this situation is not just controversial. It's dangerous. Dangerous for stability. Dangerous for unity. Dangerous for the future. In the next part, I'm going to take you deeper into the history of similar moments, other leaders, other controversies, other health scares that shook nations. And you'll see a pattern begin to appear. A pattern that reveals how power and health have always been hidden behind curtains, until someone dares to pull them back. And when you see that pattern clearly, you may realize that what is happening right now is not as new as it seems. In the last part, we talked about the explosive reaction after Scott. Besant accused the New York Times of spreading what he called a fake health narrative about Donald Trump. But here's the real question. No one is asking loudly enough. Why does this keep happening? Why does the media repeatedly become the center of political wars? And why is the public always left confused about what's real and what's not? Let's break this down. The New York Times is not just a newspaper. It's one of the most powerful voices in the Western world. What they publish shapes discussions, arguments, and even election narratives. When they print a story about a major political figure's health, especially someone as controversial and influential as Donald Trump, it doesn't stay a simple report. It turns into a political weapon. Scott Besant didn't just attack an article. He attacked the credibility of an entire institution. He basically suggested that the public is being manipulated. And this is not new. In modern politics, information is power. But even more powerful than information is misinformation. Supporters of Trump instantly saw the article as an attack, a deliberate attempt to weaken him in the eyes of the public. On the other hand, critics of Trump saw it as justified reporting. So what is the truth? The truth is hidden somewhere between bias, politics, profit, and fear. Media companies need clicks. Politicians need control. And the public gets stuck in the middle. This is how democracy starts to lose clarity. People no longer ask, "What happened?" They ask, "Who said it?" And that is extremely dangerous. Now look at the timing. This health report didn't just come out randomly. It came at a moment when political tension in America is rising again. Elections are approaching. Court cases, investigations, rallies, and possible comebacks are all on the table. So every single piece of news becomes a strategic move. If Trump looks weak, opponents win. If Trump looks strong, supporters get energized. This is not just journalism. This is psychological warfare. And Scott Bessent knows that. That's why his response was so aggressive. That's why he used the words, "greatest scandals of all time." Because in politics, the loudest voice often becomes the truth, even before facts are proven. But here's something even more disturbing. What if stories like this are not about Trump at all? What if they are about conditioning the public, slowly training people to accept what they are told without demanding proof? Think about it. How many times have you seen headlines about people's health, mental state, stability, or danger, and later discovered it was exaggerated or twisted? It happens more than we like to admit. And every time it happens, public trust decreases. People stop believing the news. People stop believing the government. People stop believing each other. That is how societies collapse, not with bombs, but with doubt. And this is the real hidden story behind the fake health report controversy. It's not just about Trump. It's about the future of truth itself. If powerful newspapers can be questioned, if powerful politicians can be attacked through headlines, then what chance does the normal citizen have? This is why your voice matters. This is why independent creators like Firestorm matter. Because the mainstream narrative will always protect itself, not the people. So now the question becomes, was this a genuine report, a political hit job, or the beginning of something much bigger? In the next part, we will look at how similar media stories have been used in the past to destroy political figures, how public opinion is secretly shaped, and why the timing of this controversy might not be a coincidence at all. At the end, the only thing I'll ask you is this. Don't believe me. Don't believe the media. Just ask yourself one simple question. Who benefits from you believing this story? And when you find the answer, you'll understand everything.